So why crypto?
So why crypto?
So why crypto?
So Why Crypto? Featuring Vishal and Quay.
Welcome to the podcast where we discuss crypto as a technology. This is our introductory episode, and we will talk about why we're starting this thing, because I'm sure you want to understand this. But before we get into that, let me just say my name is Quay, and this is Vishal, and we're getting right into it right now.
Let's do it. So in order to understand why we're starting this podcast, let me start with a question.
Yes.
When you ask people or talk to people about crypto, what is like the number one thing that you hear from them?
Oh, easy. They don't understand it. I hear it all the time from older to younger. I don't understand it. Like, that's definitely what I hear.
I would say that's the number one thing I hear as well. I don't understand. Hence the name of this podcast. So why crypto? Why do we need this particular technology? I think we're gonna go dig deep into this, help our listeners understand. That's gonna be our goal. So we're excited and beginning to get going.
Yeah, but we still have to talk about this. Why don't people understand crypto?
Yeah, well, I think people who explain crypto, they have a couple of different narratives too. So before we talk about narratives, it's hard to even dissect what is true and what is false. And there's a lot of misinformation in this particular space. And in this space, there's two schools of thought that I mostly see. So one, what you hear about crypto is really agenda driven. So these people are either for crypto or against crypto, and everything that they talk about is to support that, not necessarily what is true. And the second group I see quite often is people who are explaining crypto, they don't themselves understand it. So when you don't understand something, you're basically misinforming people. So those are two big things that I see as far as where people say, I don't understand it. That's where it's coming from.
So then when you think about those, you may mention this a little bit earlier about the narratives in the crypto space. What are those like narratives that are around, the world, or what are those narratives that you're hearing?
Yeah, so some people will say that, crypto will make you a lot of money. And then the other people will say crypto is worthless. You say crypto is freedom. And then you will hear crypto is criminal. Right? So you're hearing all these things. Then you have an investor like Michael Saylor says Bitcoin's the second coming of money. Then you got the author Nassim Taleb will say that people who actually own Bitcoin are bit idiots. Right? So you have all these different narratives that are going around. And we're going to sort out this misinformation and information and explain to you, help you understand what crypto is. That's our goal. That's why we started the podcast, for us to understand it really well. We want our listeners to understand it. That's the goal, to dissect information from misinformation.
Right. And so, what I'm hearing is confusion, a lot of confusion. But the thing is, where is that confusion coming from?
I think the confusion is coming from multiple things. So we talk about different narratives that are going around. And also, it's worth saying that it's a real fundamental technology. Fundamental technologies are hard to understand in the beginning. Let me give you an analogy of the internet. So let's go back to the late 80s and early 90s of the internet space.
Good time.
So there was a lot of confusion, right? People were like, what is this, right? Some people say internet is freedom. Some people say internet is criminal. Some people are saying that internet could make you a lot of money. Some people say internet is worthless, right? So it was the same sort of narratives that were going around at the same time. However, one thing is clear: people who made predictions about the internet couldn't see that we're going to have websites, we're going to have chats, we got Slack, we got YouTube, we got podcasts, we got all these different things, Amazon. All of that came from internet as a network. And it's hard to see, it's hard to dissect because it's such a transformational, fundamental technology. So I think internet is a good analogy to kind of think of it like going back to the early 90s and we're going to make some sense of crypto for our listeners.
Right. Okay, so we can draw the analogy with the internet and crypto. I see it, right? Just like people had a hard time understanding the internet in the early 90s, people are having a hard time understanding crypto. That makes sense to me. But this brings me to another question. What would you describe crypto as technology? How would you describe that?
Yeah, so in order to understand crypto as a technology, we'd have to look at spreadsheet. Sounds boring, but that's where you start. We start with spreadsheet, right? So it's something like Excel. So now imagine that spreadsheet that you have on your computer that's shared with a lot of other people. Something like Google Sheets or something, right? And further, if you look at it, that sheet can actually add information to it. However, in order to add that information, everybody who shares that sheet needs to agree upon it. And that's really transformational, right? So you can actually verify what's being added on by all the people who are using that particular network. And what this does is this spreadsheet, it doesn't get stored on one hard drive, right? So now it's a software that's on every computer. So that changes the game. This sounds like a really, really simple like spreadsheet. However, this spreadsheet actually builds this trust in this particular system. And simple might sound boring, but people are really excited about it.
So that's it. It's a technology that's like spreadsheets that many users store on computers, and they have to agree to add a new transaction to the spreadsheet.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the thing that it does for you is it reduces the trust in the middleman, right? So imagine I have this spreadsheet on my computer and thousands of people are using it or millions of people are using it. They need to actually trust me because I'm the middleman, right? And in this particular case, usually banks do it, right? So one of the way to look at the spreadsheet is a ledger. It's debits and credit transactions being added, right? So this becomes a ledger that is spread amongst many, many people. So instead of trusting the bank who has a ledger as a one party, this bunch of parties have it. They have to agree on any transaction that's get added onto it. There's a problem. Well, we can label it problem with the middleman. This particular technology solves that problem, and I think this is going to build a lot of new infrastructure, new things that we always wanted to do. But the middleman does two things. You have to trust them, and it costs more money when there's more and more middlemen in there. So I think this particular technology is transformational in that way.
All right, and let me jump in on that. So crypto is trying to solve a practical problem, right? Very practical problem, how to conduct exchanges without a middleman taking a cut, right? We don't want the middleman in there. So let's call that problem of the middleman. And so people want to exchange goods and services with each other. For example, A wants to buy a product or service from B. And the problem that is typically that they can't make that exchange directly without each other, or there's got to be someone that's got to facilitate that transaction. So they need to rely on the middleman. Instead, the exchange has to be brokered by some type of middleman, and we know those people. We know their names. They're the eBays or the Amazon and Coinbase. So let's dive into crypto. Let's talk about what's the next thing? Like, well, how are we going to scale this?
Sure. I think before we look into scaling, I think one of the things to understand is that the spreadsheet example we talked about earlier, right? So that fundamentally changes it where I don't have control. It's the whole system, right? The network has a control over what goes in there. So that it does the trust thing, and it shrinks the middleman, the problem the middleman that solves. You could build a lot of different things on it. So you have smart contracts that are built on top of this particular technology where the ledger is spread amongst many, many users. So a smart contract is just an agreement between two people, A and B. I want to do something with you. You want to provide me a product or service, and I pay you for it. Illustrate with this particular example. So let's look at let's look at a vending machine, right? So most of us have used vending machine. So let's say you wanted to go to a vending machine and buy a Snickers bar, right? That's my favorite. And it says put $1 in, you put $1 in, and you select the Snicker bar, and the machine drops the Snicker bar. You take it, the contract is done, right? The agreement is done.
Right.
Now, what the smart contracts, they do is just take this to a scale. So now, if we wanted to do number of transactions all over the internet, that can actually do it for us with this smart contract without a middleman, without a bank, without a credit card company, without a lot of different players that are involved. So it solves this problem of the middleman where the trust and the cost begin to shrink.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so, in understanding that, I mean, can you give, look, can we think about another, what's the best way of saying it? Just another, I don't want to say analogy, but like another use case that you can give to the people so they can understand a little bit more.
Okay, so let's look at a practical problem. So Taylor Swift wants to go on a world tour, right? At January 1st, the sales are going to go for the concert, right? And she puts it on Ticketmaster, and everybody could buy it all over the world. Let's say the sales $100 million. Taylor Swift gets that. Now, the problem, a practical problem that comes in is scalpers, right? Scalpers use their bots to buy these tickets quite fast. And when those tickets are bought by the scalper, they sell it on the second market, right? We all have bought tickets on the second-hand market. And
I'm guilty.
Yeah, and they're expensive, right? So let's say somebody like Taylor Swift, another $100 million worth of sales have gone through, but Taylor Swift makes nothing from the secondhand sale, right? So scalper makes, let's say, another $100 million. So that's a problem, right? So if Taylor Swift wants to use this particular technology, smart contracts, what she can do is she could code in the contract saying, any sale that's a resale of this ticket I would make 80% of it. She could put this at 90%, 99%, 100%. She could put it at 5%. It's really up to her, right? So let's say she puts at 80%, and scalpers or some people want to resell the tickets. They can't go to the concert. 80% of that sales, let's say another $100 million, she makes that $80 million. So now the artist makes $180 million instead of half of that going to the scalpers. So that solves a really, really practical problem that is out there with this particular technology. And I bet Taylor Swift would want to use that, and some other artists. And you can go and do this for a number of things. And there are endless different ways that builders are going to build. And, we're early in this particular technology. However, this is one of the practical things that you can solve with this particular technology.
Right. So now understanding those two use cases. So now scale. Let's talk about that scalability. What are your thoughts on that?
So scalability, again, we got to go back to the internet, right? So the internet was coming out, and in the very beginning, in the 80s, people were using it for email, right? So you had to go to a person and say, do you have an email address? Well, no, I don't. So you had to write them a letter because the network was really small. You couldn't send an email to everyone, right? Then it came to chat, AOL chats and whatnot, right? So people couldn't chat with everyone because not everybody was on the internet. So as the network of the internet grew to billions of people, you could start building things. And then now it's pretty common to ask what's your email address or, what's your social media link. So all these things built because the network of the internet adoption went up, and it takes time, right? I think patience is really lacking in people in general, and you have to go back and say it takes time. So I think it's the same thing. The network effect takes time. So crypto also needs to have this network effect, and builders need to build it, right? So somebody, for example, Bezos built Amazon in the 90s, and it took a while because a lot of people needed to be on the internet. They need to feel safe to put their credit card information. This takes time. I think it's the same way, the network effect, and the builders need to build, And a lot of time people are going to use this technology. They won't even know that they're using it. Just the same way people are using internet, like, oh, wow, there's an internet browser. I can actually, read books. I can do all these things on it. It's going to be the same exact thing. So the network takes time. I think that's where we are right now. It's scaling. It's scaling, and it takes time.
Yeah. When people come for the wrong reasons, right? When they come thinking that they're going to just make so much money, like they expect things to happen so fast. But like, again, like you said, it takes time. Networking effect, it takes time. So we talked about different examples, different use cases. Now let's turn our thought process to crypto as a technology, as it does a bunch of things. Can you give a couple examples of some things that we can talk about that's going to happen this season?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have many different kind of guests, and the focus is, again, going back to understanding, right? So we're gonna focus on information and not talk about misinformation. So again, this is a fundamental technology. So we're going to talk about, a lot of people talk about crypto. People don't understand money. So we're going to talk quite a lot about money, the functions and properties of money are, so people understand it. And then we're going to talk about networks. We briefly talked about it here, right? So networks grow over time. It takes X amount of time for people to adopt things. So we can look back at the internet, how long it took people to adopt internet, and we can draw some conclusions from it, right? We're going to talk about payments. So Alice wants to pay to Bob. How does that look like, right? Somebody wants to send money to a different country. How does that look like? So we're going to talk about payments. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. That's the granddaddy of all crypto. Has the most market cap. So we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about smart contracts. So you have Ethereum, Solana, and there's a bunch of other smart contracts platform. We're going to talk about them. We're going to have builders from those places, or smart contract experts. We're going to talk about. We're going to have DAOs. We talk about governments, how people can govern on the blockchain technology. We're going to have NFTs. That's where you can have fractionalized ownership of different things like a house or some kind of art. So digital art is also on the NFTs. We're going to talk about decentralized exchanges. We're going to talk about digital wallets, how they work, and many more other things. So there's a lot to come, and we're going to unpack it and help you understand it. I think this is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, part of our job is doing this podcast is to explain how these different tools are going to help you, going to help society, and how different jobs that it can handle. And so this technology has the potential to revolutionize so much. It's just revolutionary, and it excites us. This is why we're here. So we hope for you to tune in and listen to the podcast. You can find us on the website at SoWhyCrypto.com, also on Twitter, the social media, SoWhyCrypto, and if you prefer YouTube, we have a YouTube channel, So Why Crypto also. So you'll be able to find us. My name is Quay.
Vishal.
Thank you for being here, and we look forward for a long season of great information that is going to help you make some better decisions in life.
Thank you.
So why crypto?
So why crypto?
Why crypto?
So Why Crypto? Featuring Vishal and Quay.